This episode of Two Guys on Mobile is brought to you by Pontiflex App Leads. Go to www.appleads.com. It's time for Two Guys on Mobile, episode number 18, and we are recording this live, actually on Saturday morning, June 11th, 2011. My name is Rob Woodbridge. As one of your hosts, I bring to you my good friend Jeff Bacon, who is the other side of the Two Guys. Bacon, how are you, buddy?
Good, very good this morning. It's a nice, bright, sunny morning, so feeling good about that.
Well, as always, this is the show that instead of running down the news of the events that have happened in the last week in mobile, we're actually going to take a holistic, a bigger view of the news and kind of put it in perspective, what the impact of that news is. We always pick three stories, and we got three good ones this week. Always got three good ones, because there's always stuff going on in the mobile space. We're gonna take a look at a couple of things really around the worldwide developer conference that Apple actually had earlier this week about platforms and iOS and other companies like RIM infringing on developer territory. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk, are we witnessing about the death of the SMS? Are we witnessing that? I don't know. And of course, we're actually going to take a little bit of a departure and talk about Amazon and their Kindle and what that means in the industry. It's going to be a busy week. But first, this episode is brought to you by Pontiflex App Leads. So if you want to earn more money from your app, if you want to make a little bit more revenue from your app, check them out at appleads.com. Our sponsor. Isn't that great?
Love having a sponsor.
I'd love to bring you by. So if any of you want to be that and by after Pontiflex App Leads, untether@gmail.com. I'm not pimping this, but come on. Show us some love. So Bacon, this was a big week for Apple. Certainly the biggest week. Every time that Steve Jobs now gets on stage, people are, they clamor there. This thing sold out in like 8.5 seconds. It's like only second to a Springsteen show in New Jersey, right?
I knew you'd get a Springsteen reference in there.
Well, come on. The man is the man. And one of the things that we really noticed is that the whole reason for this thing was really about trying to drive, awareness around iOS 5 and a bunch of the stuff, the iCloud service as well. And we're not going to talk about that because it's been talked about to death. But one of the things that comes out of this is that we really, as software developers, you're building it on a platform that is ever changing, and every once in a while, more often than not now, those software platform developers like Apple or RIM start to take the best ideas that are out there and integrate them into the operating system. And you see a whole bunch of ecstatic faces over here, like it's relief because it didn't kill their product. And you look over on the other side and it's like, that product's dead, that product's dead, that product's dead as a result of this. So this is what's happening. Is this an epidemic, or is this well within Apple or RIM's right to just kind of continue innovating this way, taking some of the best ideas and putting them into the OS? Let's talk about that.
Well, it's interesting because if you look back, 15 years ago, everybody was saying the same thing about Microsoft as well, right? Oh, is Microsoft going to put an antivirus program in it? Even that was only 5 years ago. Are they going to build their own antivirus and firewall program? Is that going to put out of business McAfee and Norton and all these companies that make security software for Windows? And ultimately it didn't. They do have an antivirus software in there, and they do have a firewall in there, but there's still lots of viable business for these other companies. And the same thing's happening with Apple and with RIM and these companies with platforms that are successful and have people innovating on them. And it's just, it behooves these companies making these platforms to say, look, it's a good idea. Everybody wants it in. We need to put it in because that way everybody gets it, not just the subset of people that want to pay for it or find out about it from their friend or download it or whatever. But I think it's really interesting to see the different strategies that Apple has and RIM has when incorporating technology or ideas from third parties into their platforms. And the core of that is Apple just builds it themselves and puts it in, and RIM buys companies.
Well, I mean, interesting strategies for both of them. But I mean, some of the big things that happened as a result of this, like if you look out at some of the big announcement that came from this, where there was a lot of people hanging their heads, things like read it later capabilities in the Safari browser for iOS. So that kind of knocks out Instapaper and a bunch of these other companies like that. But these are all, when it comes to the evolution of an operating system, these are all natural evolutions, right? These are all things that people are. It makes sense for them to look at it and say, if you want to use it, use it. And if the software isn't being downloaded by the mass majority, so there are 100 million iOS devices out there. And if, there are, most software, if you can think about it, there's probably less than 1 million downloads on all this software, some of the most popular ones except for Angry Birds. So they're really not dominant. They haven't hitting less than 1% of the market. You certainly think that there's, clearly there's not a lot of awareness when it comes to the software that's out there.
Yeah, well, and whether there's awareness or not, you can make a business, you can make a small business on 1% of the mobile market. Like that's huge. Yep. As the market grows, a small company can easily make their business on 1% of that mobile market. And it doesn't always mean that everybody isn't aware of that. Just because you've sold only 1 million copies doesn't mean that 10, 20, 30 other million people didn't see it and go, oh, it's cool, but I'm not spending the money on it, right? Yeah. We know the ratio of free downloads to paid downloads on all these stores. And so I don't think necessarily awareness or the number of sales is really equals the number of people who are aware of that particular product and might actually want it. Everybody I show my jailbroken iPhone to, where I have a notification screen on the lock screen where it summarizes mail, calendar, everything, they're like, that is amazing. I wish I had that. I said, well, you have to jailbreak. They're like, damn. And I've said for a long time, like, if Apple would put that in, that's like probably the #1 thing that causes me to still jailbreak my device. It's not to get free software. It's for that one thing that I don't have to touch 17 things to see if I have new mail or new calendar on it.
Well, and it seems logical because from a RIM perspective, BlackBerry's had the unified inbox for a long time. It has notifications on the front screen. It's customizable. It's certainly been advanced ahead of what the iOS allows you to do. But slowly and steadily, iOS is moving into that realm, right? They're getting it right, but it's the experience, I think, that makes the difference between what RIM does and what Apple does. They're going to do the same things, but the experience might be a little bit more fluid when it comes to UI. But who knows? I'm just going to assume that the time was right for them to do it now. So one of the big things that happens as a result of something like this, where an operating system manufacturer like Apple or RIM gets involved at that nitty-gritty layer, is that software companies have to learn how to innovate. And I think that if you're picking up the low-hanging fruit, what's going to end up happening is that it's a natural extension for the operating system. They're going to build that feature in. You got to kind of come up with new things in order to be able to, survive. So I think that we saw this really well with the Instapaper CEO, whose initial reaction from, the equivalent to his product being baked into iOS was shit. Right? And then what he did is he realized, he stepped back and he said, okay, listen, let me think about this. They've integrated a whole bunch of social sharing features and a bunch of other layers onto it. And he said, I'm thankful that we've done that because that differentiates us from what Apple's doing. And by the time Apple gets into that, they will be beyond Apple again. So they've got to continuously innovate. And it's funny, there's a great article that I read about the equivalent to software developers being, skating in front of a Zamboni. And for you guys who don't know what a Zamboni is, the, big machine that actually cleans the surface of the ice. It melts the ice and then it cleans it. And you have to skate in front of it, or else you're going to get just swallowed up by it. And iOS, or the operating system developers, are the Zamboni, and the software developers are the ice skaters in front of it. You've got to really keep in front of it. It's natural. Don't sit back and wait for this to happen.
And you have to look at what the advantages are as you as a developer, not what the disadvantages are. I mean, the disadvantages are obvious. Your product could be rolled into an operating system update. But how many operating system updates that add significant new features are there every year? 1, 2 max that add like material feature additions to it. So you basically have a year runway from what you're doing to innovate and drive forward features before another operating system is going to absorb it in. And even then, basically, they're not going, okay, 11 months down the road, let's pick features and put them into the OS we're going to announce a month from now. They're working on that 6 months earlier. So after you hear about what's in the new operating system and you're working on products, basically 6 months later or even earlier, that's when the platform manufacturers are going to say, okay, what's out there? Let's build that in and let's lock down our feature set for the next OS. So you still have 6 months before they release what was cool 6 months ago to drive ahead of that, and then you have another 6 months to keep driving forward. So it's like when you talk about companies that are app companies and they're making small applications and making good business and some not. And we talk about the downfall of that being that if you don't have a hit, you're not being successful at it, and the percentage of hits is really low. And even when you do have a good hit, what you have to do is either go broad and either have a whole bunch of applications to try and get multiple hits, or support a bunch of platforms in case one platform doesn't do so well. You want to mitigate that risk, and or go deep on that particular piece of software. As you say, innovate deeply. So you're not just a camera plus app, you're a camera plus 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 app. And every 6 months you add a plus to that, so that's something new on top of it. And ultimately, it's one reason why everyone that comes to me with applications, I ask them about the other platforms. Oh, I have this iOS idea, but what are you doing on the Android? What are you doing on BlackBerry? I'm like, well, we need to figure this iOS thing out first. I'm like, yeah, but you also need to understand that Apple could put that feature in iOS, or if you're a RIM application, BlackBerry could put that feature in. You need to look and see if what you're producing is something that could be a viable candidate for getting absorbed by an operating system vendor. And if you're on RIM, that might mean getting bought, like Scoreloop or Torch Mobile or QNX or Tiny Hippo or any one of the other, I don't know how many companies RIM's bought over the last 10 years. But if you're on iOS or Android, it's more likely that the operating system itself is just going to implement that feature and potentially either put you out of business if you're not prepared for it, or impact your business, and you need to look at that ahead of time.
Yeah, so true, because when you start to think about the differences between the way that Apple does things and the way that RIM does things, and then the Android, who knows what Android does, because it's an amorphous blob that really doesn't have a head, right? The idea to be bought by Google and integrated in Android is it's a pipe dream, right? That's not even a reality right now. But I can't name, except for massive plays like ad networks. That's what Apple would buy, right? They would buy something that is their entire ad system in iOS was purchased, right? And it's either defensive against somebody else buying them, or it's actually for a requirement that takes them a long time to build. So this clouds, maybe iTunes in the cloud. I mean, they bought a company 16 months ago. And now they're slowly rolling it out. So whether it was a talent acquisition or not, which is typically what happens with Apple, but with RIM, they actually go after the technology. They say, like, we need that. Like, they just bought that social sharing, the game sharing company.
Scoreloop.
Scoreloop, yeah. So they didn't have that before. Let's buy it. Let's bring it in. Does one work better than the other?
Well, I mean, it's so hard to say, because Apple produces stuff at a rate which they could buy, but they're able to produce it and integrate it in, and Apple tends to produce things that are not feature equivalent to what's out there on the market, right? So when they buy the companies, or when they produce their notification system or their features, they tend to produce solid features, but just like the Instapaper guy said, oh, crap, and then, oh, wait, we have these other features in there that make ours better. That's true for basically all the feature additions Apple added that are competing with other people out there.
Yeah.
They're not exactly the features somebody else has. It's usually a subset of those features. And whereas RIM looks at it and says, well, we could spend the time to build the subset or just buy exactly what they have. Mm-hmm. So instead of building a social sharing and gaming network from scratch and trying to build it up, RIM said, okay, well, we'll just buy a Scoreloop, and now we immediately have everything that Scoreloop has, just with some integration effort to put into it, right? So it's a different strategy. Is one better than the other? I mean, you could argue that Apple's still kind of on its way up, even though it's pretty much leveled off in terms of market penetration, and that RIM's on its way down, although it's pretty much leveled off in terms of its market share. So can you say one's better than the other? I don't know. I think RIM buying companies like Torch Mobile for their browser a few years ago, that gave them kind of a generational leap ahead from what their current browser technology was.
Right.
And so that was much better than trying to develop it in-house. But I would say if Apple had purchased the company that makes the lock screen app on Cydia, because that's a mature, very functional, well-tested technology that has more functionality than what Apple has in place right now, maybe that would have been better for them, but that's just not the way of doing things.
I would agree. We've seen this a lot over RIM. RIM purchasing a lot of companies that they're looking to get into that business. So I think that it's a well-known secret that RIM buys their ISVs, right? It's just you get into bed with RIM, you don't get too big, which is the challenge, right? So you have to be at a sweet spot. So they don't necessarily buy the best technology; they buy the best technology at a certain sweet spot in price, right? So some of the technologies that they bought have been terrible. Not technologies, but we've never seen them come to commercial use. They've never materialized. So it's a play, I guess. It's a bet or it's a talent acquisition. But RIM is notoriously cheap when it comes to acquisitions, except for big plays like QNX, right? So
well, I mean, I don't know if you ask some of these smaller companies, were they happy with the amount of money they made off their company selling to RIM? I'll bet you most of them go, yeah,
I'll take it. But it just shows you that these guys aren't the market leaders. I would say that RIM doesn't buy market leaders.
I don't know about that. They bought Vigo, and on BlackBerry, there was no other leading company than Vigo for that.
Yeah, but Vigo is, I mean, I don't know how to say that. Vigo may have been the dominant market player in BlackBerry, but it wasn't the dominant product. There are many more that have soon filled that void.
But there wasn't at the time on BlackBerry, and that's what RIM's buying, right? They're buying the dominant players on BlackBerry. They don't care if you have a good platform on iOS. If you don't have a BlackBerry application, why are they buying you? They're buying people who be the top players in the BlackBerry ecosystem, whether or not they're as good as what a platform is on iOS. So whether or not there is a better RSS feed on iOS is irrelevant. Yeah. It wasn't on BlackBerry, so buying that company isn't going to advantage them. They could just build it themselves. They're going to buy someone and tell them to build it.
Whatever happened to that? Did they ever integrate Vigo?
Yeah, it's become the news and social sharing application that's in the iOS 6 right now. So I would say they integrated it in. It's a little bit different than what Vigo was when they purchased it, but the tech was there and the people that were working there and designing it was there. So I think they brought that in and let those people evolve it within the constraints of what was now the BlackBerry OS. So other companies that are a lot more recent acquisitions just haven't had time to be integrated with RIM stuff. Like it took them a year and a half, 2 years to really get Vigo deeply integrated into another major OS release. So anything they've bought in the last 12 months, you're not going to really see an impact for 12 months from now. So TAT being a good example of UI design. People are saying, well, how come the UI on BlackBerry OS 7 isn't TAT enabled? Well, because that was locked down 12 months ago, and they hadn't bought TAT then. So
no, there is that evolution, and I think the bottom line is that when we start to talk about the OS developers encroaching on the ISV community or the development community, is that take into consideration that they're not flying by the seat of their pants. Right? So whatever's coming out today, whatever was announced at WWDC this past week, has been in the works for 6 or 9 or 12 months in a roadmap. They've got it laid out. It's not like they're looking out there saying, "Oh, that would be cool. Oh, wicked, that would be cool." In the case of Camera Plus, maybe they did take that idea of turning the volume into a you hit the down, I think the up or the down volume in the new version, and it's going to take a picture. And they knocked Camera Plus out of the App Store because of that, and now it's going to be integrated right into the device. So maybe they do take the best of the ideas and integrate it. But I think products are better for it, and there's got to be an opportunity. Does one work better than the other? Both of these operating systems, all OSs, are encroaching. I think that the company that has the best understanding of what it means to have an ISV community is Microsoft, just because of their breadth of service offering and product offering. They really do work a little bit closer with their ISVs. So it's like you've got Microsoft, who's a professional management of ISVs. They understand what it's like to have that. Then you've got Apple, which is like, hey, very standoffish when it comes to software development and software developers. And then you've got RIM, which is like, hey, oh yeah, we'll buy you, just because we want to bring that technology in. It's an interesting space.
I would say RIM is, RIM has been shining the way on how to deal with mobile developers for many years. So Microsoft has a long-standing ISV program throughout its technology from other platforms as well, and they've been bringing some of that over to mobile. And they're great to work with on the mobile side as well. But RIM's ISV department is really good, and if you're in an ISV, you get way more support than you probably expect at a RIM for being an ISV partner. So
And each one of these guys looks at the ISV community, guaranteed that their goals are, you have to align your goals with them. So when it comes to the smaller software developers who are a feature in an OS, they aren't as it's not that they're not welcomed, but they're not as the relationship doesn't develop as fast as, say, there's a product that you are developing that actually helps sell their product. So you have to be speaking that language. So it doesn't surprise me that we're steamrolling, that a lot of these operating system manufacturers are steamrolling over some of the lower level ISVs. And I think that that's a natural evolution. So the moral of this is go out and innovate. You can start with a small feature, but by the time Apple or RIM or Microsoft or Nokia or any of these guys, or even HP, by the time that stuff comes into their operating system, you have to be leaps and bounds ahead. Don't sit back and rest on this, because you're going to get swallowed. And then when they offer it for free and you're charging, you're kind of done. Don't let that happen.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to sound condescending when I say this to some small software development shops, but it's sad how many times you have to talk to small development shops and say, maybe you should innovate. Like, isn't that why you're trying to build a business and do something? Maybe you should be innovative. That might actually advantage you as a business.
Well, I think so. Bottom line, this is going to happen many times over. So start to bring some new features in. Start to think, about not the next step that you should do, but the next 3 steps that you should do to keep in front of these guys. And as you know what's coming down the road. OS 5 is coming out in the fall, right? That probably they're going to make an announcement next summer for iOS 6. Think about what might be in there based on where you're going. I think augmented reality is going to have a big play in iOS 6, and certainly NFC is going to have a big play on iOS 6. So don't be the low-hanging fruit in those industries come next summer, because start now thinking about what the next version is going to be, so you're not building towards your own obsolescence. Lessons learned. So if you want more information about what was announced at the WWDC, go somewhere else. Go to any of the tech blogs out there. But if you want some insightful analysis of exactly the impact of those decisions from a software perspective, yeah, that's what we just did. Hopefully you found some value there. Closely related to that first story, the second story is this SMS hate-on. All right, and I think we paint a picture here is that you got a guy like Tomi Ahonen, who is a lucid mobile expert from EMEA. He's written like 3,000 books on mobile, and I'm not, and I that's not even an exaggeration. I think he's written 9 books on mobile. His blog posts are incredible. They're mini books unto themselves. They're 10,000 word blog posts. He's an ex-Nokia guy who is a fervent SMS guy. So if you ever follow him at Tomi Ahonen on Twitter, he does the SMS dance at least once a day, right? It's just like SMS. SMS is growing at such a rate around the world that makes you realize that it's the base common denominator when it comes to mobile. Everything that you should be doing, you have to include SMS, because it covers not only smartphones, but feature phones, dumb phones, any kind of phone. One of the reasons why people love the BlackBerry so much is BlackBerry Messenger, which is an SMS-free, over-the-network, secure text messaging communication vehicle for BlackBerry OS users. It's got the same features, like you type it, it's conversation just like SMS, but it's got some additional features, like it's secure. You can see when somebody else is typing and read receipt, so you know when they've read it, which is good and bad. Apple announces at WWDC that they're moving into that space. They're going to have something called iMessage, which is for any iOS environment. You are going to be able to have the equivalent to BlackBerry Messenger. And it's only a matter of time. There's rumors floating around that Android has been working on this as well, and they're going to integrate the equivalent. So you've got SMS, which is global. Everybody's phone accepts SMS. Then you've got BBM, which was a selling feature for BlackBerry. And then you've got iMessage and iMessage Android, whatever the hell you want to call that, as soon as it comes out. So you got 3 proprietary networks, 1 massive network. And then you got the carriers who are charging for it all. is this the death of SMS with this kind of stuff? Is there value in SMS anymore?
Well, the value in SMS is that instead of only being able to talk to people who have the same type of devices you have, you can talk to anybody.
Yeah, cross-platform is key.
Yeah, and that's why when people talk about the value of BBM, which I do agree, for whatever reason, people who have BlackBerries love BBM, and they use BBM all the time, and it's great to talk to other BlackBerry users. But as we just said, you can only talk to other BlackBerry users. Yep. The same thing's going to be the same with iOS. And everybody's saying this is so great for iOS to have an instant message service, which is true. I mean, having instant message service amongst your friends that have iOS devices is good. But people who say, oh, it's going to mean someone can move off of BlackBerry onto iOS, they still can't talk to their BlackBerry friends using iMessage. They still need BlackBerry Messenger to talk to those BlackBerry friends through that instant messaging client. So I'm not sure it's actually going to have. I mean, there will be a measurable impact on SMS traffic in the United States by having this there, because iOS is so popular in the United States, and some of the traffic will go off there. But I still have to use SMS to talk to most of my friends, because the diverse set of devices, from dumb phones to BlackBerries to iOS to Android devices they have, I don't even know what they have now, because they might have bought a new phone. And so all I know is if I SMS their phone number, they'll get the message. The people I rent to have regular cell phones. They don't have smartphones in place. The people in my office have a combination of BlackBerries and iPhones. Even in my office, it's not consistent as to what platform people have. So, I think SMS has still a large headroom to grow into, especially because the world hasn't yet maximized the usage of SMS. Whether it's in markets that are still growing cell phone-wise and technology-wise, or whether it's in the understanding of how to use SMS within marketing campaigns and product development, I think there's still a lot of headroom there, and that it's because everybody knows it goes everywhere. It's totally cross-platform. It's much more valuable from a business perspective as a business tool than some of the closed networks like iMessage and BBM.
It's kind of crazy to think that we'll go from an open standard like SMS. I think the gate here is the fact that the carriers. Most carriers charge. I mean, up here in Canada, we've got all-inclusive packages that you have unlimited SMS, so it really doesn't have an impact on us. But when you get into the States, or when you go traveling with your device, oh man, it's like sending text messages $1 a message. Like, that's insane. So I think that this is, from a U.S. perspective, a good way to combat that when it comes to this. But it's an assault, I think, because for a long time we heard about BlackBerry and BBM, and that was the reason that people stuck around. And I guess chipping away at that with 100 million iOS devices out there, that's a pretty significant amount of clout that it has. But I would agree, there are so many different reasons to jump ship or not jump ship. And BBM, not high. Like, if you've ever seen somebody move from a full keyboard on a BlackBerry to the screen keyboard on iOS, well, that's a reason why people don't go. So, yeah. And that's probably a bigger reason, because it takes a year to get used to it. From moving from a full keyboard to a virtual keyboard.
And there's another technology that fits in between, the small closed IM systems and the completely global mobile SMS systems.
Yep.
That's email.
Yeah.
All smartphones, you've got email. I'll bet the percentage of people who have an email account tied to their smartphone is ridiculously high.
As a percentage, yeah.
Sure. So, like, if you want to talk to anybody who has a smartphone, you can use email. And if you want to talk to someone who has a dumb phone, you can use SMS right now. So yeah. I'm not sure that the evolution won't be more towards the fact that as people have smartphones and they decide that, oh, I have to have a BlackBerry and BBM here, and it's a closed system for iOS over here, and it's going to be Google Chat to go on Android devices, that yep. They're not going to just go, well, I know if I send an email to the person, they're going to get it. So I think that the future is either a cross-platform IM system. You saw how popular Kik was in a very short yep. period of time to do cross-platform messaging, or a technology that already exists in email, which is one of the reasons I don't use IM very much, because I don't ever know what system someone's got. But I can send them an email and I know they're going to get it.
But yeah, those guys, like, GroupMe, Yobongo, you name it. These guys. I just had a great session with Lowcast, which is an equivalent that allows you to send, MMS equivalent to, like, any kind of media and texting, but it's all location based. So I think contextualizing this is one of the big things that's happening. So Yobongo is basically, ad hoc networking, and and location networking and disposable communications, which is ultimately what messaging is. There's a huge play for those guys because they are cross-platform. It was one of the biggest strategies, the best strategies they can make. Don't be on a single platform, as we said before. But you add things like this relationship now that Apple has tied in Twitter deeply into iOS 5, and now all of a sudden you start to think, okay, there's your cross-platform messaging system right there. Anything that you do, you bring in Twitter as your basic messaging system, and any DM, all of a sudden now, direct message, now you're talking about one-on-one messaging system through Twitter as your cross-platform conduit.
The problem with Twitter is that it's either public or you need a pre-existing connection with somebody to send a message. So,
private, but I like that.
But email and SMS mean you don't need a previously existing connection, and it's private, that you know exactly who's going to, and no one else is going to be able to read it.
Yeah.
IM is you need a previous connection, and you can send public or private messages to it. So, Twitter is important, and definitely as a communication platform, it's huge. It's interesting to read how Apple is integrating Twitter and how some people are saying, whether it's positive or negative, about some of the restrictions about using Twitter on the phone that Facebook used to not have and now has put them in place because of the experience users had when games would send 500 messages out to people's news feeds every day, and it just got to be so much spam people couldn't deal with it.
Yep.
And Twitter, I already get Twitter spam, and if people are using Twitter on iOS...
That's not for me, though, right? You don't consider for me Twitter spam.
No, not half of the articles anyways. It's the ones where people have 0 followers and are following 0 people and sending you out a picture that may or may not be safe for work.
Yes,
that is Twitter spam. But if it's deeply integrated in iOS and people are sending out 10 times as many Twitter messages, is there 10 times as much relevant information you want from someone? Or is your Twitter stream, which I already keep my following list fairly concise, because there's no, like, if I have 500 new messages, am I going to look through 500 messages? No. I'm not going to read them all, so I'm not sure why I should follow 1,000 people when it just becomes a stream of useless communications. So if the amount of information people are sharing on Twitter goes up by an order of magnitude because of the deep integration in this, without having the controls on it for message flow, the value of Twitter can actually go down because the relevance of the information can go down on it.
But, I totally agree. I mean, when Twitter gets up there, who knows how many active users there are, because there's a lot of spam bots that are going on, but that's the active stream. I think from a DM standpoint, I mean, RIM has integrated Twitter deeply as a super app, deeply into their operating system as well. And I think that it'll be a little bit like that, where why wouldn't you use an accepted conduit like Twitter as a basic replacement for SMS, because you're not going over SMS, you're going over the network.
Well, RIM hasn't integrated it deeply into the OS. The Twitter client integrates the super app touchpoints, as does the Facebook client, as does many other applications on the BlackBerry platform. Unlike iOS, which into the native applications on iOS 5, they're building direct hooks into Twitter from there, not having a Twitter application that links into their apps, probably because they can't do that. Like, RIM has the hooks in for applications to integrate with the native stuff, and Apple doesn't have those same capabilities. They need to do it themselves on the OS side.
Yep.
But when you look at, like, when someone lists the advantages of having Twitter integrated into iOS, half those advantages already exist by using the click on sign into Twitter or sign into Facebook. It's the exact same thing. You're missing maybe one step, which is, okay, you can automatically sign in, but that's going to go away because people are going to want the security to be able to say, yes, let this app, right? Yep. So you can already get half of what they're getting by integrating Twitter in there. The difference is that some of their native applications are going to have some direct connections, but
that's that's where this gets really interesting, because if you've got a native, so on BlackBerry OS, you've got a kind of a native, all your messages in one place, right? You've got your notifications, your messaging all in one place, and Apple's about to have that in iOS 5. So all of a sudden, you're going to get your direct messages into one spot. All of that stuff gets fed into one spot. So you're going to have that universal inbox that Facebook is trying to do so vehemently, and this blocks Facebook out a little bit. But if that's brought in, you can understand that you're going to have the flow of all your conversations coming through on both of these platforms, and Twitter is going to be a part of that. Absolutely.
So I have a relevant but slightly skewed question for you.
Yeah. A question for me? Oh, no.
For you. So what if Apple is kind of tying their horse to Twitter as a social platform here, right?
Yeah.
And Google doesn't like to tie their horse to anything. They're trying to screw up on their own with social networking stuff.
Well, they're building it all. Yeah.
Yeah, and so far they haven't been successful from a social standpoint, right? So what if RIM ties their horse to Facebook and the RIM demographics of social connections already align well with Facebook users and what Facebook wants to do with the universal inbox? That's RIM's line right there, right?
Sure.
So what would be the impact of RIM saying, okay, we're going to go to Facebook and say, we want to be the Facebook phone.
Yep.
So don't go build your own phone. We'll build the Facebook phone. It'll be a BlackBerry. It'll have Facebook integrated as deeply as you can possibly integrate. What would be the impact of that for RIM in terms of being that deeply connected with 600 to 700 million Facebook users?
I think that Apple going with Twitter like that, the second largest social network, opens up RIM. If they don't do that, close the goddamn doors, right? This is a golden opportunity. Whether or not Facebook would be open to that or not is a deeper conversation. But if this is something that RIM should be pursuing whole hog, simply because they don't have anything left, right? Whether or not they build a Facebook phone, like a dedicated Facebook phone, like the challenge with RIM is the hardware. Right, it's outdated hardware. So whatever they do going forward with the hardware and the structure of the hardware and QNX and all that kind of stuff, that UX is going to be so great, and that's what Facebook will be looking at it. So Facebook has just hired a design firm, a worldwide design firm, in order to be able to bring Facebook's UI up to par or advance it, because it hasn't over the last number of years. Same thing that RIM needs to do, and maybe QNX is that, maybe TAT is that. The combination of those, I think, is great. But the tie-in to Facebook as a route, so instead of like what Apple's doing is basically saying, you're identifying yourself through your Twitter account, which can be anonymous, which doesn't have to have your full name, which isn't ID, right? Isn't your natural ID. What if RIM just did that, built it in so that you can identify yourself through your Facebook account? I think that this would be something that would be great, just as a first level.
Well, what about the combination here? Now, RIM, obviously, 20% of the smartphone market share, somewhere in that range.
Yep.
Making hardware, but transitioning to a very, very solid OS, has a design company in place to build the next UI on it, does have the hardware capabilities of producing millions of devices, and you can change that hardware and then still be able to produce those devices, right? They may have some hardware design challenges in terms of the straddling line between enterprise and consumer, which is why their devices tend to lag behind from a hardware design perspective. But now they have QNX in place, and QNX is not only going to power their smartphones, but QNX powers the majority of cars that are out there, right? And you see now cars,
GM cars, yep, absolutely.
Well, not just GM. QNX powers
BMW,
like 80% of the car systems that are out there right now is powered by QNX.
Yeah.
And so as these cars move to have those intelligent screens on their devices, there was actually a good video of an example of a QNX powered interface that was done in 30 days. For a car manufacturer on the web, done by a local auto company, Lixar IT. Actually, they did it. And so, if you take this QNX base of cars, which is part of your life, and RIM, which is part of your life, and Facebook, which is part of your life, Facebook's worth how many $1 billion? What if they bought RIM?
I never even considered it, but yeah, what if they bought RIM?
Like down there in all these phones, they have a hardware division in place with an operating system that powers not just millions and millions of smartphones and is lock solid security-wise, but also is in cars, which is also the next part of your life to transition. So Facebook being your social platform between when you're in your car, when you're on your mobile device, when you're on the web, like that's...
Yeah, it's funny because, on first blush, it says, like those are two contrasting brands, right? And the perception of RIM, warranted or unwarranted, is not high right now. I mean, if you go to Walt Mossberg, or All Things D, they have a great picture of Bob and Doug McKenzie superimposed with the co-CEOs, like basically not believing anything they say. For some reason, All Things D and Walt he loves Apple and hates RIM. Like, it's a visceral kind of absolute hatred. I don't get it. But unless he was an investor early on and he's just hammering the stock. So you got two opposing brands in Facebook and RIM, but they may complement each other. I always thought that, Nokia, we've talked about this, Nokia should have bought RIM or RIM should have bought Nokia. That would have been a perfect combination, symbiotic relationship. And, that would have been great. But Facebook, could I see that happening? Probably not. But would I think that would make sense for somebody like RIM? Sure. Maybe it wouldn't make sense for Facebook, because Facebook could then be, it's tied into the platform as opposed to having a ubiquitous open platform that everybody could tie into.
Well, they're not tied. I mean, they're not tied into the platform. They're leveraging QNX, which nobody, even the worst detractors of RIM, don't slag QNX as a platform. It's impossible to dock that system. So it'd be Facebook getting in with a solid system that's very, very flexible to integrate Facebook within QNX to be in cars and mobile devices. And it powers more than that, but obviously you're probably not going to want to put Facebook in spaceships.
Well,
but
but you know what? Maybe not. You want to sign in from space? Sure. Facebook Places, we're going to need deals on the moon at some point. Let's put this down, is that, on June 11th, a Facebook buying RIM. All right, let's talk. Let's keep that conversation open. And I think you just hit on a very key point here, is that the difference between the technologies that we're talking about, typically this is a RIM and an Apple conversation that we've had this whole episode. As you said, RIM, the difference between these two companies, between RIM and Apple, is that RIM powers the space station, right? QNX operating system powers the shuttles. There's a piece of that, like it's the ugliness, right? Nobody likes that. It's not sexy, but they're up there. iPhone rides as a passenger on the space shuttles, right? That's the difference, is that one does all the work. The other one is like, hey, dude, I'm kicking back. I'm going to run a few experiments. But, on the last space shuttle launch, if you haven't heard, 2 iPhones are going to go up there to run a bunch of experiments. But it's like one is seen as a luxury brand. The other one is like the workhorse. And I think that's the difference. So Facebook buying something like RIM, it would be panned wholly across the entire technology community as a kind of a WTF Facebook, right? Who knows what would happen, but it certainly would. Somebody has to do something. RIM needs to do something drastic, and maybe with a QNX and the next version of the hardware, maybe that's what it comes of it. I still think that the leadership needs to change inside of RIM, but that's an entirely different conversation. Gonna break here, talk about Pontiflex app leads for a second, because if you're an app developer out there and you are tired of the low eCPMs, the revenue that you're generating from this is something that I would draw your attention to. They're a sponsor of the show. We love them because what they do is ultimately they do sign-up ads, which don't take you out of your app. You take your customers out of your app. You stay within the app. It's very targeted ads that are displayed, and you ultimately have an opportunity to. I've seen some eCPMs that are 50 to 100 times the revenue that traditional in-app ads, where you click and take you to a web browser and take you out of the game experience or the app experience, achieve. So 50 to 100 times. I don't know why anybody wouldn't look at these guys just as an opportunity. We want your apps out there. We want you to make some money. So if you've got a good audience, you want to start to drive revenue, and you don't need 1 million users, which is one of the big things here. You need some users to start driving revenue. So like if you need 1 million to start to make a living, then maybe you need 100,000 with something like Pontiflex app leads. So go and check them out. Start driving revenue. We want your products in the market. We want this ecosystem to grow. We want you to make money. So this is one of those things that it's a natural fit. So go to appleads.com, sign up, take it for a spin, and start driving some more revenue to you. Put some money in your pocket so you can do this full time. I'm talking to you app developers. Go do it. Appleads.com. We love them, and we thank them for sponsoring the show, because we love bringing new and innovative technologies that actually make money to you guys out there. So appleads.com. Love them. Last story, if you can believe it. I think we're only 9.5 hours into the show. We're not. I can't guarantee that we're not going to talk about Apple. There was an announcement that came out. Kindle actually drives is going to drive $1 of revenue out of every 10 that Amazon makes. So almost, I think they're up to like 8% this year, and by the end of next year, they will be driving 10% of revenue for Amazon. I don't know why they wouldn't say that instead of the $1 out of 10. Pretty significant numbers, but not at all a surprise, and not at all. I don't think that they've accurately captured how much the impact that Kindle's having on Amazon's bottom line. But first of all, does that surprise you?
No, I mean, I think that since for 20 years, everybody's been talking about trying to read books on the go and finding better ways. And, oh, look at all these digital stuff that's coming out. Why can't we read books and ebooks? And they've been failures left, right, and center on them. But that everybody has been saying eventually someone's going to get it right. And people want this solution. People want to be able to take 100 books with them and not have to carry 100 books, just throw a Kindle or a mobile device in their pocket to do it. So it doesn't surprise me at all the volume that Amazon is managing to ship to these Kindle devices. I don't know a single person that owns a Kindle that doesn't love it.
Yeah.
I've never met a Kindle owner that says, "Oh, this thing sucks. I wish I hadn't purchased it." So from that firsthand feedback on it, it just seems natural that Amazon would be shifting so much over to it, and the format just makes so much more sense, right? There's zero shipping cost on it, so even if you charge the same price for the book, you're not paying any shipping charges on it, and you can get your book back if you lose it because it's a digital copy of a book. So it doesn't surprise me that they're shifting it over, and it doesn't surprise me that Amazon is the one that's been successful at it, because they've been successful at selling everything. I mean, how many things have they failed at selling, really?
Not. I mean, I can't think of anything. They were slow to come out to Canada and for shipping, but now they're in Canada. They're a very substantial competitor to our local bookstores, obviously, but they do so much more than that. They haven't brought the electronics or the food that they have in the States. They don't have the
food.
Yeah, like and toiletries and that kind of stuff, right? Do they sell food? Well, I'll check that out. Anybody out there who let me know if they sell food, but they sell disposable goods like toiletries, shaving cream, toothpaste, all that kind of stuff. So you start to think about they don't have that up here in Canada yet, but they're it's like Walmart, a digital Walmart, but they've perfected this, and they've also got this your preferred shopper, so you get great rates, so they don't pay for shipping, so they haven't failed. Then they bought Zappos, right, and integrated that kind of culture. They brought the culture into Amazon, and I mean, I can't say enough about this company that 12 years ago people were panning as a dead technology. I mean, look what they've done. They've proven the model, and whatever they do when it comes to the digital distribution of books or any other digital asset, they're going to dominate as well, because they understand retail first, and they understand, they're innovative. They've always been innovative. But the thing with this, 1 out of every $10 is that this is a report from Citi analyst Mark Mahaney, we've mentioned here before. He's not taking into consideration the gray markets that are coming as a result of this. So he says, they did 17.5 million Kindle sales. They sold 17.5 units, which is incredible. What does that put it like in a tablet market? Second, right behind Apple, if you consider this a tablet, which you don't.
Far and away second too, like not just second and close to third, like a massive second place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from an OS standpoint, you're still talking about iOS, as a book reader, as the opportunity to be a book reader, still very high. But they did 17.5 million Kindle sales. It's $2 billion in revenue, like $2 billion bucks, $2 billion. That's incredible. And then they did 310 million Kindle books. That generates $1.7 billion, which is amazing. So $3.7 billion, that's just shy of 10%, around 8%. Then what they're talking about next year is 26.2 million Kindles and 751 million ebooks or Kindle books. So for a total of $6.1 billion in revenue, adjusted for the increase in revenue, about 9.9 or 10% of the total revenue that Amazon is supposed to earn. Those are the numbers. Those are the facts. But what this doesn't take into consideration are the kind of so 310 million Kindle books. that's just Kindle books. So let's talk about magazines and subscriptions. Let's talk about services that come in. Let's talk about what you're able to do now with the Kindle operating system and developing applications for the Kindle operating system. Like this is just a small portion, I think, of what we're about to see when it comes to the digital infrastructure that Amazon's going to be putting in place around the Kindle and around even Android tablets. This is companies who aren't looking at Amazon right now, who are in this space, risk failure.
Yeah, I mean, I know a company that started doing some of the first games on Kindle and launched when Amazon launched the game capability, and they did really well with their products there, and that was showing an extension of Kindle onto more than just ebooks, yep. Right? And already, I mean, what does Apple reportedly make off of App Store? $2.5 billion. So yeah. Amazon's projected to make $6 billion off of digital book sales.
Yep.
And everybody's saying how well Apple is doing selling applications when they're making 2.5, and Amazon's making more than double that off of books alone, not other digital products on that platform.
Yeah. But think about what they did is that they opened up the digital book platform to self-publishing. Man, right? So even if you're selling your ebook for 99 cents or $1.99, it's a portion of the revenue. It's insane. Then what did they do? They did an ad-subsidized version of the Kindle. So those revenue numbers are not in there, right? So you get $25 off of your Kindle. So what? Like, what's the revenue that Apple or that Amazon is generating as a result of putting those ads in all those Kindles? This is
Which,
the biggest.
By the way, is the most popular Kindle model, right? The ad-supported one.
But it's insane. They're making more than $25 a unit just in the ad distribution. And the more of those that get out there. So if 50% of those are distributed next year, so 13.5 million devices out there with ad supported, that's an entire ad network. Like they're going to make hundreds of millions of dollars just off of that ad network, pushing books. Then you start to get into preferences and advertising based on the books that you've read. This is its own ecosystem that is massive when it comes to digital distribution.
Yeah, and look at the Kindle. When you talk about the ad-supported Kindle, which is $114 right now, right? Yep. And it's projected to easily drop below $100 very soon.
It should.
Okay. They need to look if you look at what is Amazon making per Kindle on a book selling and on an advertising basis, right? How long is it before basically they say, you know what, buy 3 books, we'll give you the Kindle for free?
Well, I'll take even one further. It's join our Book of the Month club, you get a Kindle free.
Absolutely.
So pay full price, or you pay $12 a book, and we'll ship you the Kindle. And as long as you are a member of that Book of the Month club, your Kindle will remain active.
Well, they didn't have to do that. They could, because it's an ad-supported Kindle. The thing is, what they have to look at is what is the lifetime revenue of a Kindle user, right? If that is higher than what it costs to make a Kindle, give people a Kindle.
Yeah.
Like as soon as that revenue per Kindle user, and not just the average, but like the median, goes above what they make on a Kindle, they should be shipping 100 million Kindles out to everybody in the world for free.
Yeah.
Like they should be just every conference
student.
ship hundreds of them out there. Give them away to everyone they possibly can because they know that they will make money on that. The hardware cost is going down and the revenues on them are going up. So it really shows what you can do if you can build a platform in which you can find the ways to drive revenue on it such that you don't require hardware revenues to make profits, that you make your profits on the software. And what I think this other thing that shows is as Apple or as Amazon,
I know, so do I.
Right? I keep saying those two together, but as Amazon learns this and does this with the Kindle platform, and as technology evolves, naturally the Kindle platform gets better and better and better just by the growth curve of technology, right? So right now it's running a fairly low-end black and white screen. It's got a long battery life, which is important. But their higher-end Kindles are going to start to evolve. So they'll give you the free one away, and the one they'll charge you for, what if that one runs Android and embeds their Amazon App Store on it, right? So now you're saying, well, we'll give you this one for free, but for $100 you can buy the one that plays all these Android games on it as well. So what does that do to the Android tablet market, and then therefore Amazon's percentage of revenues out of the Amazon's or the Android software sales?
Oh, I know. Well, I mean, this is big, and ramifications from this aren't being felt yet. But Bezos, brilliant. What he's doing is incredible. And you think about, just around the distribution of this thing. If they give these things away for free, and you sign people up, studies have noticed this. Many of these have come out that people buy more books as a result of buying a Kindle. This is just a known fact, is that you consume them faster, you buy them faster. It's like this is what Apple did very well with like the Buy Now button on the iOS. Kindle's done that, right? People are reading books on iPhones or Blackberries, which I never would have seen that day, where it's like that small, crappy screen. But because of WhisperSync, which is a great technology, your books are with you wherever you go. And which sounds ridiculous because that's an advertising campaign. It's like, hey, now it's really, your books are portable. Like, well, they always were, but you know what I'm saying is that this is just, watch Amazon. Just watch Amazon. This is going to be, I think, one of the most valuable companies on the planet over the next 5 years. This is one of those companies that will, could feed, Walmart its lunch. I think that this is where it's going.
Yeah, if I'm not an investment advisor, so don't take any of my advice as canon or come and sue me if you lose money. But if I wasn't buying a house right now, Amazon's, I think, a pretty damn good company to look at to say, 10 years from now, they could easily be worth more than Apple is.
Oh yeah,
like the headroom on Amazon should be much higher than what it is on Apple right now.
I agree. 100% agree. Just because it's something that a lot of people like to invest in tangible goods, and retail is this, and it's why Walmart did so well. But I think Amazon for me is is undervalued. It's going to be worth more than gold, and I think that this is one of those companies that not only they changed the shape of retail when they launched themselves in the mid to late 90s. I think that they've just every year they've continually evolved to that point, and they're going to do it again around digital goods and distribution like this. They're going to do it again, and every technology step that we've gone through, the internet and mobile, there's going to be winners and losers, and this is going to be the first company that we're going to see that over the last 12 years has won at each step, right? And unlike RIM, who won in the initial mobile step and now are faltering, they still have an opportunity. But Amazon is right there, both spaces embracing this like nobody else has done before. It's unbelievable what they're doing.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of time. I think we killed this one. I think this was like we should have spent all our time on Amazon and less time on RIM and Apple, but that's the week that was. Those are the big stories that are actually going to impact you. And this is our assessment of what those stories mean. Forget about just regurgitating news. What you want is a little bit of insight from people who understand the industry. That's what you come here for, week after week after week after week. We love that you do that. We'd love some feedback on what we're doing. Do we find the right format? What else would you like to hear from us? Send us a note. Send me an email at untether@gmail.com. Wherever this is posted, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Send us out at Twitter at Rob Woodbridge and at The Suave Hog. You can find me at untether.tv or robwoodbridge.com. And Bacon, where can people find you?
Bacononthego.com. It's a great place to get a hold of me. All my blog articles are there. Post the podcast up there, as well as other stuff going on in the industry. Haven't been busy the last couple of weeks, so haven't been blogging as much, but hope to get back to it again shortly.
Work gets in the way. That's why we have to do this on a Saturday morning.
Work and buying a house really takes a lot of time.
Boy, does it ever. And in that order, right? Yes. As always, we appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next week for episode number 19 of Two Guys on Mobile. Later. See you, Jeff.